Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Manish, and I'm the Engagement Director at HSO. I would like to welcome you all to our Factory of the Future and Resilient Supply Chain Industry webinar. We are very excited to have you all. We've got very large content pack and great speakers lined up for this webinar today. Starting with Chandru Shankar, our Managing Director for Manufacturing at HSO. Chandru is 30 years veteran when it comes to manufacturing and automotive industry, including 15 years at Microsoft. Followed by Chandru, we have Wesley Nelson, Enterprise Architect in Supply Chain and Manufacturing. And Wesley has been, again, quite experienced in various parts of the world, bringing you some top-level ideas. Last but not least, Angus Pryor, our solution architect specializing supply chain and transportation management. And all three of them are going to share some great insights and experiences, which I'm sure you will find value.
Well, thank you, Manish, and thanks to all for joining. It's certainly a momentous time in the technology world, especially for manufacturers looking to transform their operations. And we hope today's session gives you some ideas and actionable insights for your own journey. So let's get started. Really quickly, from an agenda standpoint, I'm going to cover off on some of the industry trends and strategies we're seeing, both from a factory of the future standpoint as well as from supply chain resilience. We will then take you through some of the solutions that we have at HSO to help customers and manufacturers like yourself. I also have a couple of my expert colleagues with me, and they're going to go deeper into two specific areas. So we've got a pretty filled agenda today. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with some trends that we're seeing from a smart factory or factory of the future, as you might call it. So as we know, we've been about a year and more after the pandemic. And certainly the focus so far has been on recovery and getting to the new normal. But we're also seeing a whole set of technology advances. You're all seeing what's going on with AI and data analytics, data mining, and that's certainly front and center for a lot of manufacturers. So what they're looking to do is take AI and data mining and make sure they're set up for the next big disruption, whenever that might be or whatever that might be, and make sure they're prepared for that. And AI is certainly being leveraged across the board in a lot of areas, specifically from a manufacturer standpoint with sales and operations planning across the board, from starting with better forecasting, planning production capacity. I was reading about how some companies are using AI for their schedule optimization as well, which is such a challenging aspect of it, but it's quite interesting to see how AI is being leveraged in so many different areas, and certainly with predictive maintenance. So just starting to see more and more areas where we're seeing technology impact manufacturers and how they're setting up for the future. Certainly supply chain transparency and accountability. This is an area more and more customers are focusing on, especially with the global disruptions that have happened over the last couple of years. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the coming slide. Customers are also starting to look at more ways to do remote work, especially virtual maintenance, given that you have a IoT data coming out of pretty much so many devices across the organization. Organizations are generating millions of terabytes of data on a daily basis, and they're starting to leverage that. And also digital twins, which is such an amazing build up, if you will, with technology. So many different areas that can be virtually set up and used as simulation. And so using that, companies are starting to set up more and more in those areas, especially with maintenance, performance monitoring, etc. And finally, customers of the manufacturers are looking to the manufacturers to become true service providers themselves. And with this, there's a call for better communication needs, and solutions such as supplier relationship management, which we'll talk about, certainly come to the forefront. On the supply chain resiliency side, again, we're seeing some big areas of focus for the CXOs. Three specific areas that we're seeing. Over 2/3 of the respondents. By the way, this is from a survey that the manufacturer has done with a big subset of manufacturing companies, and 2/3 of the respondents mentioned that they've built out digital dashboards to look at their end-to-end supply chain and see how they're performing. Only about a little more than a third actually implemented scenario planning, but what they found was those who did, no surprise, twice as better to be able to basically overcome any challenges that they have from a any issues that they see with the major disruptions. And finally, only about a half of the respondents felt that they have clean master data. And this is obviously very important now with technology. You've got better solutions surfacing up reports and patterns of data. So they feel that they've got to do a really better job of going in and cleaning up all of their data that's coming out of the multiple areas, especially legacy data. On the flip side, what was interesting is that organizations are definitely still looking at inventory buffers, and this is still a way for them to build resilience, especially with the disruptions that we've seen. 97% of the organizations that pretty much across the board built bigger buffers and safety stock. Obviously, when you do that, the inventory carrying cost comes with a big cost for the organization. So it's something that organizations have been doing. But what we are seeing is some new methodologies, and we'll talk about some of that and how we can support organizations to do better whilst you're building more inventory. The other couple areas mentioned here is dual sourcing and regional supply networks, and you're seeing more and more of that being a focus area for the global leaders. Just a couple things that I want to call out. Gartner identified 6 key actions to make these strategies more actionable. I'm not going to go through all of those in the interest of time, but just a few ones to really highlight. While you focus on your technology, make sure you focus on how they improve and enhance how your employees do their jobs. I like the aspect that it isn't the solutions that are disruptive, it's typically the deployments that are. So you might scope it well in advance, but you're never going to cover off 100% on all scenarios. So at some point you'll get to a point where, okay, I've done all the analysis and I'm pretty good to go. Let's get going. You're always going to find something more as you keep going. Benefits, these are really key. Make sure you identify at different stages of your deployment what are the expected benefits, because in some of the early stages you might not get all the benefits obviously while you're doing it, but those benefits might be beneficial at a later stage. And then finally, communication plan. This is such a key area. Create a roadmap, create communication plan, make sure that from the executive branch all the way down to the factory floor, everybody is on board and understands where you are at all the stages of the deployment. So with that, I just want to transition over to who's HSO. Some of you have probably already engaged with us and you know us, but for those of you who are learning about us for the first time, we were founded in 1987. We're one of the top 3 global Microsoft Dynamics solution providers out there. Especially from manufacturing, this is a huge area for us, number 1 industry for us. We'd like to say we're large enough to serve, but small enough to care. I love that tagline. We really are. We're across the world, but at the same time, we're small enough to make sure that we follow through on whatever we make promises to you. And finally, we are a 100% Microsoft shop. We leverage the full power of Microsoft technologies. We are certified across all 6 areas, as you can see. Just a couple things more. As I mentioned, manufacturing is our largest vertical area. We've already signed 25 plus new customers globally in the first half. And we continue to grow triple digit every year. 24/7 global practice. What does that mean? We not only do our solution implementations, but we also have managed services, and we can do support 24/7 for customers. And really, whilst we are award-winning and analysts recognized, I mean, we are 17 years consecutively in the elite Microsoft inner circle. So we're in the top partner in the world, but we also have built, as a result, a lot of know-how, a lot of capabilities, and I'll talk about that in the coming slides. Just a few of our customers across the board from a manufacturing automotive standpoint, from an industrial discrete standpoint, from a process manufacturing. What does that mean? The agriculture, chemical, food industry, the pharma, life sciences. Then, of course, from an automotive standpoint, OEM or tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers as well. So we're working with customers across the globe like yourselves, and we hope to work with you as well. So as I mentioned, we do have a whole set of offerings that we bring to bear to our customers with some IP that we built out that we support directly. Across the value chain is what I've depicted here from a supplier all the way to the customer standpoint. So IP like the supplier relationship management accelerator from a supplier management standpoint. From a factory supply chain standpoint, we'll talk about a few of these like demand-driven MRP, et cetera. We have other tools like graphical scheduling tools. For process manufacturing, we have an ISV solution for regulated industries that we support. So we have solutions, and then of course, when you have multiple entities, we have a financial solution. Today we'll also talk about what we do on the asset management side, as well as on the fulfillment side, what we do with advanced warehousing. Of course, there's a lot of areas, and we won't be able to cover every one of these. We're just going to touch on a few of these. But I encourage you, if you see things that you would like to see more about or learn more about, please reach out to us, and we'll be glad to set up one-to-one sessions with you to go deeper into these areas. This same IP we also mapped to the Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing. So Microsoft has a reference architecture for manufacturers, automotive folks like yourselves, and it's basically on 5 pillars, if you will. So agile factory of the future, you have supply chain resilience, customer engagement, digital innovation, and workforce transformation. So the 5 pillars with security, compliance, sustainability in the smack middle, and data. So we have our IP and our offerings mapped very, very well with this reference architecture. Certainly, this is a big area, and as I mentioned before, we won't have time to go into all of these, but we'll hit on a few of these that are key, and we'll talk through that today. I'll start with agile factory of the future, or smart factory, as some folks call it. Again, this is also a vast area, but first off, what is factory of the future? What the analysts call this is it's a complex ecosystem, right? What the idea is, it becomes a regulating system which can manage their own machines and sites, customize output, allocate resources optimally, and essentially, as companies build out digital twins, it can offer a seamless interface between what's physical and what's virtual, and kind of be able to track all of that and make adjustments on the fly. That's kind of like the layman definition of what companies are trying to achieve with agile factories. Again, this is a vast area. It encompasses people, assets, processes, data. So it's vast area. Today we're going to focus on two areas. Some of the solutions that we have from a production operation planning standpoint, and then asset management as well. So let's first start quickly with smart manufacturing solutions. MRP is still the key, the key staple for planners, right? So it's still an essential component of the sales and operations planning for the stand-ups and the meetings that companies have. So that hasn't changed over the years. That's still the number one area. But what we're starting to see is more newer methodologies. And one that I want to highlight today is DDMRP, or demand-driven MRP. So what DDMRP is it actually encompasses MRP, it encompasses distribution requirements planning, DRP, it encompasses lean and theory of constraints. So it actually brings in all of these different methodologies and fuses them. But the idea is that to build in strategic buffers along the way. So as opposed to MRP, which is trying to get all the materials and capacity and then trying to run a plan and a schedule taken into all of these constraints, and then it's hard to replan because now it's taken so many constraints into the equation. And when it does do a replan, it's hard to predict where the changes are because it's taken into account so many constraints across the board. Whereas with DDMRP, you're able to put buffers in different areas and break down how MRPs run and it's kind of like focusing on one area to do the MRP run, and so it makes it more manageable for the customer, and it also makes it more strategic and more understandable for the customers as well. So we're seeing customers have great benefits out of this. Decreases of 30% to the inventory levels and 98% increases with the service levels, decrease in spending with the costs like cross-docking or emergency transports, etc. So for us, the strategic decoupling and reducing which reduces the lead time for customers it's a great opportunity to help customers. But the nice thing with the way the solution is set up with Microsoft Dynamics 365 is that you don't have to go entirely into DDMRP. So we can select a subset of your product line and you can say these solutions, they've been doing MRP for a long time, is absolutely fine. There's not a critical area where we need to look at, but we can look at a subset of products that are more critical and where you have a lot of fluctuation in your demand or a lot of changes needed with your scheduling. And for those, we can look at how we can see how DDMRP works and how that might help you with your operations. So just different methodologies and concepts for you to help with your planning. The other area that I mentioned I want to talk about is asset management. Obviously, this is an area where companies are really looking at from a predictive maintenance standpoint, but also from a field service technician optimization standpoint. And I'm happy to bring in one of our experts on this topic, Wesley Nelson, and he's going to walk through in a lot more detail on each of these areas, including a solution demo. So Wesley?
Right. Thank you, Chandru. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. What I'm going to do is, on the basis of what Chandru spoke about, is just dig a little bit more deeper into asset management and asset maintenance overall as a concept. And what I have for us here today is a slide just to depict how in current unautomated asset management environments, how current processes are working. So typically what happens on the top left-hand side is that we can see is that there's an issue. Something's broken down. Nobody knows about it until somebody goes in to look at it effectively and identifies that there is an issue happening, right? Effectively, we go back to our asset call center and we tell our asset call center, we log, an email or something, and we say, hey, okay, there's an issue with this sort of piece of equipment on the production line or within the plant that is effectively bringing production to a halt. Yeah. Effectively, what happens is a couple of days later, we schedule the maintenance worker to go out, and the maintenance worker goes out, right? That typically takes around a day or so, depending on the criticality, 2 days, depending on the criticality of the machinery or the equipment that is within the production plant. The maintenance worker then goes out and he effectively has a conversation, he does an inspection, and then he gives some sort of remediation or fault action. Yeah. And it goes back to the call center, and that call center then goes back to the customer. But how effectively we consider connected field service as a whole within the Microsoft ecosystem is leveraging IoT sensors. So this scenario could play out completely differently from the beginning, where we have an IoT sensor on the plant or on the device that's telling us that it's overheating. This is then triggered within Dynamics 365 to create a work order automatically with the criticality of a 1 that basically indicates that somebody needs to go out immediately and can auto schedule this. Assign it to a maintenance worker based on a skill level effectively, and then somebody just rushes out there to inspect this. Yeah. But without the power of using tools like IoT sensors, like sensor analytics, like Dynamics 365, we still sort of follow the same approach in terms of approaching our asset maintenance. That leads me into what D365 asset management can provide to us as a business. And based on my experience of implementing asset management across multiple customers across the globe, effectively I see this from birth to a retire of an asset. So where we create the asset, we can acquire the asset, we can bring the asset in to make sure that we're tracking a P&L correctly against the asset from an acquisition, right through to the maintenance of it and installing the asset across what we call functional locations within Dynamics 365 so that we have visibility of our assets in a very much of a tree view, which is what I will show you when I go through to the solution demo in a bit. And then, of course, the big portion of it is maintaining of our assets. So doing our breakdown maintenance, our corrective, safety maintenance, and then, of course, preventative maintenance on top of it. Now, within a holistic solution, which what D365 Asset Management has is that it gives us basically a one-stop shop to do everything. So we can effectively manage our asset master, indicate what spare parts are needed so that the automation that I spoke about in the previous slide is available, where a maintenance worker knows exactly what tools he needs, what spare parts he needs, how much forecasted time it's going to take to resolve the specific breakdown that's happening on the production floor to bring the production plant back up to ensure continuity and that we're able to meet delivery to our end customers, right? Over and above that, we can do asset budgeting to make sure that we're meeting within our company targets, cost control, scheduling board, it's got everything. Up until the end, where our asset depreciates, if it's our own assets, where it depreciates and we can retire it out and replace it with a new maintenance asset, but from a fixed asset perspective. As a whole from Dynamics 365, it's not a standalone module on its own that sits outside of the application or outside of the ERP. It is embedded within the ERP that gives us great visibility into all subledgers within the ERP. So it's directly integrated with our procurement. So if I need to procure services or I need to procure spare parts, there is no integration required to achieve that. It's integrated into our human resources where we can control our maintenance workers and control their schedules and control their skills, into production floors, where we can make sure that we manage our assets, our equipment that is loaned to a production floor and keep on top of that. So as a holistic solution, D365 Asset Management provides that from a birth to a retire scenario. If we move across now to my next slide, what I have here is effectively just giving us a user journey when we relate to a breakdown maintenance, right? So this is the typical user journey. And effectively, we, as I mentioned earlier, we raise an observation. That observation goes into the call center within the application. The call center reviews, approves the maintenance request. Then a work order is created. That work order then goes into the scheduling or the planning team. They schedule the work orders based on the capacity of the maintenance workers. Then we do some procurement and execution off of that and forecasting. We release the work. The maintenance worker works. He completes the work in the mobile app, which I'll show you some screenshots later. And basically they capture their time against it, so we can track resourcing costs against it, and we can capture material and any expenses against it. So all of that rolls up to the cost of the asset to give us a full holistic view of our assets. That updates it, and then we have some wonderful embedded Power BI in leveraging the ecosystem of Microsoft, embedded Power BI within Dynamics so that we can view all of our analytics across our assets, which I'll show you as well. Next scenario I want to take us through is, of course, the big topic, which is, and I know from experience within organizations, is preventive maintenance. So the power of Dynamics gives us the ability to be able to set these schedules by asset, asset type, asset criticality. We have the advantage of ensuring that there's no miss in terms of planning of our preventive maintenance against our asset. And that automatically runs something called a preventive maintenance schedule. The work orders are pre-planned depending on how your scheduling happens internally. So we can do it a year. I've seen some customers do it a year in advance. Some customers even do it 2 years in advance, depending on the size of the plant or the sizes of the plants within the organization or the manufacturing plants. We schedule that again. We do some procurement on top of that, which is effectively the same cycle as a breakdown or a corrective work order. We release it, we capture our time and materials, and then we update our asset. So the full life cycle of the asset is managed within D365, giving us complete visibility and not depending on industry applications outside of the ERP to integrate into it and have this very awkward process where certain people work in a certain application and certain teams work in another part of the application. So here we have a holistic view of D365 asset management within one place. Now to show you some of the newly released screenshots of the mobile application, effectively this is what the maintenance worker's view is of the mobile application. So they can raise a request as an example. They can raise a request on their own. If they see something happening, they can create an inspection request and they can go and inspect the asset to make sure that the asset is performing effectively. Yeah, they can effectively see all of their jobs that are assigned to them and their work orders that are assigned to them as well. In the next slide, we can see here that basically what they need to do is a checklist. So every single asset management organization that I've implemented at, effectively one of the customers that I've implemented at was a helicopter manufacturer. And effectively what they did is that because it was a specific type of helicopter and specific type of asset within the helicopter, there's certain steps in the checklist that they have to go through before they can proceed to actually performing the maintenance. So Dynamics gives us the ability by maintenance asset type and even by asset itself to create a checklist that defaults that the maintenance worker does not need to even think about what actions they need to perform. It's step by step. Life cycle of a work order is pre-configured so that it is easy for maintenance workers not to know what to do without the system driving them, which I think is quite a powerful tool to do. And they have to do overall condition assessments, etc., in any sort of asset management business. Then it tells them the exact steps that they need to go through. They can add attachments in the mobile application of photos of the current condition of it. They can create something called a fault management where they can log a fault against the asset so that for repeatability in future, if another maintenance worker goes out to that asset and they need to perform maintenance work on it, they can go and look at the faults that were logged against the asset previously for quick resolution time to decrease the time and increase the uptime of the asset and decrease the downtime of the asset. So it gives us the power to ensure that we can effectively manage our assets, even from a maintenance worker perspective. They can log their time on there. They can make sure that they log their inventory items that they need or their spare parts that they've consumed from the warehouse or the store where they've picked the spare part up. Effectively, the asset management mobile application gives them the entire scope of their daily management of their job. Now, if you just allow me, I'm going to move to my screen. Just going to take over sharing for a second. So now we're in Dynamics 365. what we're in here is something called a workspace. And a workspace effectively is one central place where a call center needs to come into, or an asset management manager or a supervisor comes into to see a visibility of all of the work orders that are currently in progress within the organization at the moment. As we can see, we've got some tiles at the top and we have some list view. All of this is configurable. So you can configure it based on views that is important to the business, no development required. But something that I know from experience that a lot of asset management applications or businesses are looking for is measuring of KPIs to effectively understand what is my current situation at the moment. Now, what I've done here is I've configured a couple of KPIs for us, and I've seen that as an example. I'm looking at my schedule KPI to see what is my current measurement right now within my scheduled work orders. So I can see that I'm up 43.5%, right, versus my goal. Yeah, I can see my trends that are actually affecting my KPI. And this is, again, is all configurable. I just configured it and effectively given us a view of KPIs against it. I can see my top contributors to my KPIs. I've got these many preventative work orders with this many hours, these many safety work orders with this many hours, and then these many corrective work orders. There are adding contributors to my KPI measurement. And then my bottom contributors, right, are the same sort of logic again. So these have not been worked, they've been scheduled, but they haven't been worked on. And effectively then what I can see all the way at the end here is basically my scoring patterns. And these are all configurable in the power of an asset management supervisor, where you can do some powerful KPI reporting straight out of the data and the dashboard within Dynamics. Right, and give us basically some percentages here to tell us that effectively what is my strength, where is my strength and where is my weaknesses when it comes to that. Now I'm going to give us an overall work order view effectively from a work order perspective, and here I'm 12% up on my KPI, right, which is quite good. It's better than being down on my KPI. And I can see again my trends, my analysis. I can see my top contributors based on criticality. So it gives us all of these models out of the box to measure KPIs, which is quite a win for organizations that are doing this manually in Excel based on my previous experience. Is they're taking data out of their current systems and they're manipulating the data based on the KPIs within the organization, and that's what they're using for reporting. Whereas now we go to a steerco meeting, etc., and we can present it directly out of Dynamics based on how we've configured it, which is quite a powerful tool. Next thing that I know from experience with customers where they struggle a lot is effectively their asset view and the way that they manage their assets within the organization. So what we have here is a standard asset view based on location. So if I just open up this one below, I can see that I have location here, which is my plastics manufacturing plant. And under that, I've got multiple sub-locations. So my raw material line, my extrusion line, my finished good line, the utilities, my forklifts, which is my equipment, my safety showers, and my equipment warehouse, and even my garage. So if we do some sort of vehicle maintenance within the organization, we have skill internally, we can manage that as well. I'm going to go down to my extrusion line. And I can see that I've got 3 sublines under my extrusion. And under that, I've got my assets and I've got my specific locations. Yeah. And as you can see, it's a very hierarchical view to give us a view right down to the lowest level that this air knife for line 2 sits in this location, which sits in this location within the within the manufacturing plant, which sits at the actual manufacturing plant level. And it gives us a lot of integral information around that. And if I just go into this asset for a second, so we can see the power of the data, because that's 80%, in my opinion, of asset management is data, is managing our data correctly. And as Chandru alluded to earlier, is that seems to be a biggest pitfall in a lot of organizations around the supply chain execution. Yeah. So what Dynamics gives us the power is the one central place to manage all of our asset data in one place and nothing outside of the application. Yeah. So on this asset here, I have a lot of information around it. I link it to my fixed asset from a depreciation perspective. I can see when I replace the asset, any sort of notes that have happened against the asset, whatever attributes I want against the asset, the vendor information, where I bought the asset from, what was the purchase order number. It gives us this holistic view of our asset. Where is the asset even located, right? to assist maintenance workers when they're looking on their mobile device that they don't need to really think about anything anymore. It empowers them and automates the process from beginning to end for them from an asset maintenance perspective. As I said, we can capture a lot of information against the asset. So we have asset details where we can put images on it. We can see where this asset is installed, where in which functional location it's installed. Then we have related information, which is quite a powerful tool as well. Here I can see like hour controls. So I can see how many hours have been spent against this asset at one view, not taking data out, manipulating it, and then viewing it. Yeah, I can see what spare parts I have. I can see what faults have been previously raised against the asset for our knowledge base that we need within our maintenance teams. And then the biggest one that everybody's talking about now, and Chandru alluded to earlier, is our cost control, making sure that if a pandemic like COVID hits again, that we're able to control our costs against at an individual asset level, at a functional location level, at a plant level. That's the power that Dynamics gives us. And my third point that I just want to raise that I know customers struggle with a lot from my experience is actually scheduling of my assets, all right, or of my work orders. So what I want to show is the power of what Dynamics brings in now. Microsoft's brought into one of the latest releases of Dynamics is a schedule board, right, which effectively gives us the ability to schedule based on days, hours, I mean, even down to minutes. I haven't seen minutes being used as yet, but I mean, I can imagine what sort of business would require to plan to a minute level. But it gives us that power to ensure that we're able to see all of our work orders that are scheduled and write down to who is the maintenance worker that is scheduled, when is it starting, when is it finishing, and as true style, we can move it around, we can move it to the next week, we can update it. And what this does is that it updates the original work order, which updates the original maintenance request, which informs the user that is waiting for this asset to be maintained that this is happening and this is the change of the schedule. So throughout the entire value chain of the process, we're able to engage our business, if we're a business that is maintaining customer assets, we're able to manage customer expectations. We're from one simple place and ease of using asset maintenance. Yeah. So those are the three areas that I thought are pretty impressive to highlight where we have such strength within Dynamics. And yeah, thanks, Chandru, for your time. I'll hand over to you again.
Great. That was excellent. Really enjoyed it. And by the way, there are a few questions that have come up. Maybe we can take a couple of them before we move to the next topic. One question that came up is the audience is asking, do you have multi-site asset management capabilities? For example, can you schedule across sites?
Absolutely. So as I showed you in the functional locations, we can see by the multi-sites as an example, we call them functional locations. So we set up our multi-sites there and we can schedule across sites as an example. So in the schedule board that I showed you earlier, I showed that we have a functional location and we can schedule by functional location or we can schedule across functional locations. So absolutely Dynamics can meet that requirement.
Great. One more question before we move to the next topic. Can you set up technician pools, for example, to leverage skilled workers for maintenance scheduling?
Wonderful. Very, very good question. One of the powers is that because it's an integrated ERP, we have the power of using the HR and basically affecting the asset maintenance, and we capture the skills and the certifications against the maintenance workers based on their speciality. So if I need an electrician and I assign a skill to an asset that this is an electrical asset and only an electrician can do it, I can auto schedule work, Chandru, on the basis of the fact that I go click a button and on the basis of the availability of the resource, and their skills, it will automatically assign it to that resource and schedule it in that schedule board for us. So we don't have to do any manual scheduling. We can basically just go click a button and based on the setup, it can do it automatically for us.
I can see customers already loving that. And yeah, you're going to be getting some calls after.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Wesley, thank you for that excellent session. Now, in the interest of time, let's move to the next topic, which is supply chain resilience. Again, just like other topics, there's a lot to cover in this area. We're going to pick a couple of specific topics to focus on. First off, we're going to talk about supplier visibility. We have a really great tool with Microsoft Supply Chain Center, MSCC. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some IP that HSO has to surround that with SRM and data analytics. And then we'll bring in another expert to talk about advanced warehousing. So let's get right to it. First off, I want to talk about Microsoft Supply Chain Center. This is a solution that's just come about, and Microsoft's already working with a number of customers. We're working with Microsoft as well with our customer base. And what it is it has 4 key areas that we've depicted here. So there is a data manager, which allows you to pull data from multiple sources, whether you're running Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain, SAP, or whatever ERP you have. So you're able to bring in your finished good bills of materials, your sales orders, your purchase orders, forecasts, etc., and manage it within the data manager. Also, there's a partner portal, so you're able to connect out with your suppliers to get their information, and get their production plans, their inventory forecast, delivery dates, etc. So those are key areas from a data standpoint. And oh, by the way, it can also connect out to other data pools like Azure Synapse or Snowflake, etc., to get that data and to put the data back into those tools as well. And the other areas that this tool provides are from an insights and analysis standpoint. So it has a supply and demand insights analysis, multiple dashboards, already views built in where you can see different slices of the data and different views. And then finally, do a true impact analysis and see, okay, what happens if this scenario and if we change to a different supplier, for example, or we're not going to get this inventory in time or the supply in time, then what happens to the demand signals, etc. So it's a really all-encompassing tool that allows you to manage when you have multiple backend systems that you want to connect with, and then manage it across the board from there. Would love to take you through more details on this. So if this is an area of interest, please reach out to us. We'll be glad to set up some one-on-one time. Surrounding this, we're working with multiple customers. Bossard is one of our customers. A world leader in fastening solutions, over 80 locations, 22 countries. We built out a supplier relationship management solution for them to help onboard their suppliers. We have a portal and then manage the whole process with them maintaining their own data. You see a screenshot below of some of the quality data that the suppliers directly manage. They can manage their own manufacturing data. Of course, the dates of when the quantities get supplied to the customer, all of that information is tracked within the portal itself. So this is an area where we can help customers through your upstream. So as a first, second, third tier suppliers, and make sure that you have that visibility and the data available within the portal. On the analytics side, we've also worked with a whole set of customers there too, Booker, Barron's, for example. And again, what we've done is basically set up a reporting suite, of course, connecting with your backend system, D365 or any other backend system that you have, but on top of it, have different data inputs, and then getting that slices from inventory analysis, financial analysis, your sales, whatever, and we can adjust this. We can create different reporting suites based on your KPIs. So it's a very flexible tool as well. So just some of the examples that we have. We have a really short time that we don't have the ability to go into depth into every one of these areas. So if this is something that's very interesting to you, please reach out to us. We're glad to set up one-to-one sessions. But what I do want to do is to now go into warehouse management, such a critical area. from a fulfillment standpoint and making sure your customers get the orders that they've placed on time, efficiently. And for that, one of our experts, Angus Pryor, is going to talk through the functionality that we have and how we can support you. Angus?
Thank you, Chandru. Yes, my name is Angus Pryor. I'm a supply chain enterprise architect. I'm actually an Australian boy, as you might be able to hear. I'm a Melbourne boy, but I've been living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands for the past 8 years. I'm part of HSO's international team. So HSO has a presence in 20-something countries at last count. But the international team specializes in customers that have a supply chain or an enterprise that spans over multiple countries. So Bossard, which Chandru just mentioned, is a really great example. They've got a presence in Europe, in the USA, and I think Asia and Australasia as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the international team is really designed to do those big enterprises where we've got inventory flying all over the world or being shipped all over the world, and we've got enterprises that span all of the time zones around the world. And of course, our support desk is set up for those global enterprises as well. But diving into warehouse management now. Warehouses and production sites or manufacturing sites must work hand in glove. It's absolutely essential. The raw materials start in the warehouse, the finished goods end in the warehouse, and production and manufacturing is in between, of course. Okay, so this is an overview of the D365 supply chain management ecosystem. We won't go into a great deal of detail on this slide. We're just going to be focusing on this middle line here, which is the warehouse management. So D365 warehouse transport and quality capabilities at a glance. Obviously, we've got a fully functioning warehouse management system, which is embedded into the ERP, and that's the same ERP where all of the asset management and maintenance lives. It's the same ERP where all of the production and manufacturing lives. It's all embedded together in one system, absolutely integrated. And of course, we have all of the functionality that you would expect in a fully fledged warehouse management system. We don't have time to go into great detail now, but of course we have inventory management, inbound, outbound, quality management, all of the warehouse operations, all of the labor management that you would expect. And as Chandru and Wesley have already mentioned and touched on, we have all of the embedded analytics that come with the Power Platform. We also have some materials handling and carrier integration, which I'll take us into, and we've got a mobile app for the warehouse as well. So one thing I always like to talk about when talking about warehouse module functionality is flexibility and configurability. So this is D365 is really designed for the full spectrum of warehouses. This is a concept that I borrowed from Gartner. It talks about the levels of complexity of a warehouse, whether you've got level 1 storeroom or you've got level 5, which is fully automated. The D365 warehouse management system can take care of all of them. And really importantly, it allows you to scale up from one to the next, to the next, to the next, without a huge amount of investment in new software or code or processes. It's very easy to scale up. And when I talk about scalability and agility here, we're talking about agility in a broader sense. We're talking about agility of the whole solution map, agility of your business to take on new things. So if you take on a new product line, or you lose a product line, or you merge businesses, or you decide you need to become more sophisticated in one of your operations, all of this is really easy to introduce to your warehouse processes, starting at a simple warehouse, which might just have basic locations, locating directives, then moving up to something more complex where the system uses more of its intelligence to instruct the workers what to do. Then we can move into automated cluster picking with, of course, intelligence about how to build the clusters. And that's for picking and for putting away. We've got packing and sorting functionality, which can be introduced. Then we can move into the highly dynamic pick locations and slotting. We can do bulk pick and sorting. All of these things can be introduced. Then we can move into automation. So at the top end of the sophistication for a warehouse, we've got conveyors, we've got automated storage and retrieval systems, we've got all of these machines and robots doing the work for the humans. And I like to use the term human machine work sharing. From a work management's perspective, from the warehouse manager's perspective, the way you conduct the work, the way you deploy work out to the workers and to the machines, it's exactly the same. The way D365 integrates with these things is really in exactly the same way. It treats the work in exactly the same way from humans to machines. So it's got this really great generic framework, which is designed for low code extensibility. You might have heard this term low code, no code, which is something that us Microsoft guys like to say a lot. So if we're talking about an automated warehouse or an automated production and manufacturing facility, we have this generic framework, which is designed to be integrated with all sorts of warehouse control systems and warehouse automation equipment. Some examples I've listed here. Some conveyors, automated storage and retrieval systems, order storage and retrieval systems, vertical storage towers like Cardex, and we've even got voice picking. That does require an add-on app, but we do have a voice picking app which works on the standard Android device. So that Android device that the workers are carrying with them around the warehouse can do voice picking as well as standard scanning picking on the same device. And that really reduces the investment that you have to make into hardware. So again, talking more about low-code extensibility, the functionality in D365 warehousing is really amazing. It's very, very fully fledged. But what Microsoft has done is they built in extension points, extensibility points for when you need something custom. And these exist all the way through the warehouse functionality. So when we're talking about warehouse process methods, you might need a custom little piece of functionality to print a label to a particular printer in a particular format. We can just put a tiny little piece of code into the warehouse process methods, and the system is designed to be extended at that point. We can have custom work types as well. So if we want to tell a worker or a machine to do a particular thing, wrapping a pallet, or give them a particular wrapping design, we can put that in a low-code way at the extension point that Microsoft has provided us, so that the instruction is being sent to the worker or to the machine. Quality checks are obviously really important in manufacturing and warehousing as well. And we've got some really great extension points to build out whatever you want to do for quality checks and quality auditing. And sometimes we use the low-code extension points that Microsoft has designed and provided us in the system. And sometimes we use those extension points to trigger a Power App. And when we're talking about Power Apps, we're moving into what Microsoft calls no code. So we can actually, from the warehouse mobile device, using configuration recognizes this particular raw material or finished good needs to have a particular quality process performed. So the Power App will fire up on the mobile device in a seamless way and allow the worker to perform those quality checks as they're standing there, finish the process, and then seamlessly it jumps back into the standard warehouse app. So the tools that Microsoft has given us to extend the warehouse functionality, to do these special little custom things that we need, or to launch Power Apps, to do somewhat more sophisticated things, It's all in there by design. And it's really impressive the way that Microsoft have given us this really excellent warehouse management system embedded in the ERP, but designed in these points where you can do low code or no code extensions to your functionality to make sure it all operates exactly the way that your business needs. I wanted to talk a little bit about the new features in the warehouse module. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the new features. I am going to tell you about new features are always coming. Microsoft is very clever about the way they release new features. They tell you about the new feature, and then you go into a feature management part of the system, and you can enable that new feature so that it doesn't get in the way of your existing processes if you don't want it. But they release new features. They're investing so much money into warehouse management in particular, but also the other parts of the ERP, that they've actually designed this way of alerting the user that new functionality exists in this part of the system. Would you like to learn more? So I've just given an example here. This is one of the configuration forms called location directives. And we can see this blue box has popped up while I've been using the system saying, we've got some new features here. Would you like to learn more? Click on the link and it takes you out to the learning page on the Microsoft website. So this is just some recent examples of new functionality that Microsoft has introduced for warehouse management recently, but this is an ongoing thing. This is just part of the way Microsoft keeps on investing in the product and keeps on giving us new features. And they get the ideas for those new features from the user base, from what we call the user community, the Dynamics community. So Microsoft is very good at listening to their user base, listening to their customers, prioritizing what new features need to be built, and then deploying those new features into the warehouse management module. So a little bit about the warehouse management mobile app. I'll actually jump into the app right now. So this is in demo mode. We're not using real data and I haven't configured this, but this is the standard warehouse management app. It can be run on a Windows machine, which I'm doing at the moment, or an Android device. So pretty much any Android device manufactured in the last few years will be able to run the standard warehouse management app, which is built by Microsoft. And I'll just run you through a very quick process here, just doing a time check. I think I'd better actually skip this part of the demo, or at least go very, very quickly. So we'll scan a work ID here. It gives us an image on the mobile device, so the worker knows exactly what they're supposed to be picking, tells us what location, what item, and what company. We can have confirmations that go in here, so they confirm the location by scanning it, or they confirm the item by scanning it. And then we say, yes, I've done that, confirm the quantity too. Normally we can just scan that or type it in. And then we deliver it to the put location. It tells us where to go. Again, we can have location confirmation here. So we scan the barcode or the check digit or the location. And now that work is complete. So really nice, really new app, very easy to understand and very easy to use for the workers. I won't go into this again, we're limited on time, but just like every other part of D365, we've got workspaces that are designed for the role and can be customed for the role without any coding. So here we've got a warehouse manager who's managing outbound work planning, and they can see in a really easy way what work needs to be done, and tapping on any one of these tiles, they drill down into the details. Okay, I'll hand it back to you, Chandra.
Great. Thank you once again. That was excellent. By the way, a couple quick questions. I know we're really running out of time, but just a couple quick questions that have come through. Easy one. Is there a pre-built integration between warehousing and production functionality?
The answer is no, because you don't need integration. It's all one system. So it's all absolutely all integrated within the actual same application. There's no integration. It's one integration, one application.
Right. And then the other one, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here. You already showed a bunch of low-code apps examples, but they're asking specifically about quality control. What you may have done already from that.
Yeah, so the quality control functionality, the standard quality control functionality that Microsoft gives us is really extensive. But what we do if the customer requires more, and every business is different, every business needs something else, is we build a Power App. Power App's a really nice way to build, in a no-code way, to build functionality that actually looks and feels like it's absolutely embedded into the application. And that's true for the main application, the D365 or the mobile app. So you can do anything you like with quality control, and that Power App feeds the data back into the ERP, so those quality records are reportable and recorded for all time.
Super. Great. Thank you once again. I know we're really, I think we're over time, so let me pass it back over to Manish and Nicole. Thanks again, Wesley and Angus, for your great presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for your time in joining us in the webinar today. Thank you, Chandru, Wesley, and Angus, for the great content. Appreciate your time. We had some great content and a lot of questions which we ran out of time to answer, but we will get back to each and every of you individually during the course. Hope you had a great day, and if there's anything we can do to help and assist in the meantime, please let me, Jim, or HSO team know. Thank you and have a good day.